Good morning, good evening, everybody, according to your time zone. Thank you so much for joining with us today, 18 December 2021. We are almost at the end of the year, and this is the new starting with a theology, religion, and how it is important to our day to day life. We have today our wonderful guest in our Web Platform for Dialogue webinar series of 2021. Web Platform for Dialogue has been launched with the support from KAICEED in 2020 during the pandemic. When people were clueless, they don't know what to do, how to deal with their internal crises as well as external crises. So, in that time, we thought let's have a platform where people can come over here, they can share their views, their observation, their research work from different perspective, from multidisciplinary way. Today, we are very, very lucky to have Professor Fitriyah. She is a wonderful person, and her full name is Lailatul Fitriyah. Lailatul Fitriyah is an assistant professor of interreligious education at Claremont School of Theology. She is also PhD at the World Religion and World Church program in the Department of Theology at the University of Notre Dame. Her dissertation research focuses on the construction of feminist theologies in post-colonial Southeast Asia, in which she looks at the lives of Indonesian female migrant workers in Singapore at sites for theological knowledge production within the framework of Islam and Christianity. Her work ranges from comparative analysis of Christian and Islamic feminisms, feminist interreligious dialogue, migration, religion, and decolonity, and critical Muslim studies. She holds an MA in International Peace Studies from KROC Institute for International Peace Studies, University of Notre Dame. Between 2015-16, she was a Nostra Aetas Fellow at the Prophetic Potential and with the Pontifical Council for Interreligious Dialogue, Vatican City. That is a very prestigious PCID. So I welcome Professor Fitriyah for today's lecture. Myself, Dr. Swati Chakraborty, Assistant Professor, Human Rights, GLA University in India. I am also a KAICEED Fellow 2017. Now we are going to hand over the session to Professor Fitriyah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chakraborty and Web Platform for Dialogue for inviting me to this event as a speaker. I think through this event, and I've seen some of the posts about the regular meetings that you have at Web Platform for Dialogue in Dr. Chakraborty's Facebook post sometimes, and I think this initiative has been working wonder. You've been working really hard to build networks around people despite the pandemic that currently have separated all of us around the globe. So today we will talk about youth interreligious dialogue and peaceful reconciliation that is initiated by the youth. And in here, my case study is actually happened in the island of Ambon in the province of Maluku in Indonesia. I did my field research several years ago in the island. My research was not particularly focused on the youth groups, but then of course when you do field research you really couldn't separate between one social groups from another. So eventually I also engage with some of the youth groups who are doing really wonderful work of reconciliation in the island of Ambon. And also I just really forgot, I want to say good morning, good evening for people who come from different countries and different time zones in this lecture. So let me just start to share my screen here. Okay, so I hope everyone can see this well.
Perfect.
Okay. So, talking about the presence of youth in a conflict context, I remember the phrase "the children of war," of course, because they are actually, especially in the context of Ambon, Maluku, this youth, both from Muslims and also Christian side, they grew up within the war. They grew up and they shaped their identity in a correlation with and also in the middle of the dynamics of interreligious war that happened between Muslim and Christian groups in the island from 1999 to 2002. So this is the children of war. But whether or not the children of war will continue war, or whether the children of war will produce peace, that will be the question here. So before we delve deep into our analysis on the youth reconciliation efforts in Ambon, let's try to see the context of the conflicts itself from their own eyes. So in here, I will show you a video of the story of Ronald and Iskandar, two of the many youths that are victims to the conflict of Muslim and Christian conflict in the island of Ambon. Let me see if this works.
Hey, I'm Russ Rufino, and if you're a coach, consultant, expert, author, or speaker, I have just one question.
All right. Do you able to see this the YouTube video that I'm presenting now, or should I switch first?
You have to switch first to
Okay.
the YouTube. Yeah.
All right. Let me switch first to the YouTube video. Okay. All right. Now, can you see this?
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
That's great. All right.
Kalau berapa banyak saya membunuh, saya tidak ingat, tapi begitu banyak.
Saya potongnya udah pakai musik. Bunuh beta, tahu musik.
Saya Ronald Reagan, bekas komandan tentara anak pasukan Agas, kota Ambon.
Saya Iskandar Slamet, saya mantan pasukan jihad di Ambon.
The patchwork of Christian and Muslim communities on the island set about destroying each other as businesses and properties were put to the torch.
Yesus penolong hidupku, beri aku. Kita saat itu kita beranggap kalau ini adalah perang suci. Kita membela agama dan membela tempat tinggal kita. Saya membunuh mereka saat itu dengan menggunakan senjata rakitan, menembak mereka itu dalam jarak yang sangat dekat. Mempertontonkan mayat lawan itu seperti membuat kita semakin kuat, semakin menggebu-gebu masuk dalam bidang pertempuran.
Kita cukup sadis. Kalau saya sendiri masuk dengan dendam. Saya punya dendam yang cukup kuat. Saudara sepupu saya juga ketembak mati di tempat.
Di tempat ini orang-orang yang saya bunuh pun sering datang dalam tidur dan saya selalu menghantui.
perjalanan kita daerah Muslim itu cuma silaturahmi, ada sekitar berapa kilo aja dari Talaki ke Said. Stres. Kayak kita tuh nggak bebas. Kita cuma jalan di tempat itu, situ lagi. Bisa nggak kita melangkah di sebelah? Melangkah di sebelah tapi ada rasa takut, Mbak. Saya dibunuh nggak? Jadi bandar, DP Makai, kehidupan malam.
Seandainya bisa berputar waktu kembali, saya seperti anak-anak zaman sekarang sih bermain. Zaman dulu saya melihat begitu banyak sampai teman-teman dekat pun meninggal. Yang saya lihat hanya darah dan mayat dan rumah yang terbakar. Terkadang masa kecil yang bahagia untuk saya sih.
Masih dengan curiga, kita datang dengan curiga. Kita mulai dengan lirik-lirik aja, lihatnya nggak berani senyum, nggak berani tegur kok.
Pas tahu dia Muslim dan dia pemimpin dari pasukan jihad ini, di situ kita hampir berantem dan hampir saling bunuh di situ. Untung cepat panitianya langsung melalai dan reda.
Kita tulis amarahnya kita, emosinya kita, rasa bencinya kita, rasa dendamnya kita. Kemudian kita bakar semua rame-rame. Sebenarnya saya paling benci sama orang Kristen. Karena mereka sepupu saya mati ditembak depan saya. Tapi akhirnya kita bakar semua.
Kita bercerita kalau di orang Kristen itu isunya kayak gini. Di Islam juga menceritakan isunya kayak gini. Padahal loh, kok isunya sama. Nah kita juga sama-sama tidak tahu. Dari situlah kita mulai sadar, oh, ternyata ini hanya sebatas komunikasi sebenarnya.
Onol yang bisa bikin kita semua akhirnya benar-benar nangis gitu. Onol cuma bisa bangkit dan bilang, paling sayang kamu sama. Itulah sih. Umur udah tuh. Mewah udah semua. Nangis. Itu paling sayang kamu sama. Karena kita bilang kamu sama kita saudara. Bikin kamu bete yang ada di muka. Sampai bikin kamu karton yang tongkat di muka. Kamu kakatolan karton yang ada di muka kamu.
Hendak kususuri dengan nafas di mancung hidungmu. Mengapa kau putar muka, saudara? Hendak kuraba.
Karena saya basicnya dance, saya ajak kawan-kawan untuk menari dan mengajak kawan-kawan untuk melukis, baca puisi. Dengan berkarya kita tunjukkan ke mereka kalau ya oke, kita mungkin dulu kita membunuh sesuai dengan apa yang kamu katakan, kita merusak Ambon. Sekarang kita ingin membangun Ambon.
Kita anak muda Maluku, kita lah penerus Maluku ke depan.
Konflik Maluku itu tidak ada kalah atau menang, karena kita banyak yang mati, ya. Kita banyak yang juga rumah-rumah kita banyak yang terbakar, sama juga dengan mungkin Jiwa sama yang Kristen. Justru kita ini adalah imbas dari entahlah siapa yang punya perbuatan yang kita, pada akhirnya kita yang kena imbas. Harapan mungkin semua titik mati ada di generasi kita aja, biarkan generasi kita merasakan itu, dan ya mungkin dengan menceritakan kisah kita mungkin orang di luar sana menonton dan akan mengambil hikmah dari apa yang kita rasakan di sini.
Kau penjaga zaman yang jantan, mari menyanyikan lagu nenek moyang dengan suara gelombang yang tenang.
Okay, thank you for staying with me throughout that video, and now let's continue with my presentation. Okay, so those are the story of Ronald and Iskandar, only two of so many Ambonese youth who has been spending some of their childhood or even the whole parts of their childhood during the war, and also actually actively participated in the conflict. Now, before we delve deep into the what is the conflict looks like, let's see the background of the island of Ambon for people who didn't know where this island is located, and also what are the demographic of the island. So in 2020, the island of Ambon has population of 475,000 people, around 475,000 people, who are 49.2% of those were Christians and 44.3% of those were Muslims. So when we talk about interreligious conflict in Ambon, in this island that is located in the eastern part of Indonesia, we really talk about a balanced dynamic in terms of armies who kill each other, because Muslim population and Christian population, they have almost the same demographics in the island. So this is really deadly. This was really a very bloody conflict, because both sides of the conflict, they really have a balance of power in terms of population. And also the interreligious conflict itself, like I said before, it started in 1999. It was actually starting from a very small interpersonal conflict between two men in a bus station in downtown Ambon, and then it becomes and also because of the political dynamics in Indonesia at that time, it becomes blown up into a full-scale interreligious conflict between Muslims and Christians, until it was ended by a formal peace treaty that was signed in 2002. Now, the background of the conflict, there are several factors, of course, that shape and also serve as a context from which the conflict was born. The first of those is a historical fissure that was created by colonial centralization of Christian orthodoxy in central Maluku, which is this Ambon Lease island, with an indifferent tone towards the Muslim community. So back in the day, in the colonial era, where the Dutch was still ruling the islands, the Ambon Island, which is most strategic and most populated, was shaped into a cosmopolitan area that received most attention and resources from the colonial government, while the Muslim community is kind of left behind on the other islands in the Maluku province or in Ambon, but they are actually only populating the outer rim of the island that has no any resources from the colonial governance as much as the central Ambon did at that time. So there is actually a colonial history of formation of this conflict already between Muslim and Christian groups in the island, based on how the colonial government actually kind of specialized their treatment for the Christian groups of the population, while leaving behind all other groups in the island. The second factor is a modern fissure that was created by a transmigration program that was underway in Indonesia, especially on its peak on 1970s up to 1980s. In this transmigration program, under the regime of Suharto, who was also authoritarian, there are a lot of Muslims who come from Java Island being transmigrated to the island of Ambon. And so the coming of these outsiders from an island that has a really different, cultural dynamics and also traditional dynamics than the island of Ambon, becomes something that becomes another fissure too. There's distinction between local and immigrant, especially, and this fissure came to take up an economic profile, because the immigrant who comes from Java, they were deemed to be working harder than the locals, who were mostly Christians in religion, and also who stayed in the island at that time. So these immigrants, these new people coming from outside, bringing new culture, bringing probably new interpretations of religions, because Islam was already there, but of course the kind of interpretation that the Javanese Muslims brought to Ambon might be significantly different from what Islam was on the island. And then they also actually very effective in developing their own economic power on the island. So there is this modern fissure that was created by this transmigration program. And at that time, the fissure, the dividing line between these communities are actually not simply on the religious line between Muslim and Christian, but on the socio-economic line, in which people differentiate themselves based on whether they're locals or immigrants, and whether they're on the bottom of economic status, or they are rather higher up or in the middle class, because they were immigrants who actually successfully built their lives in the island. Now, then these economic fissures, the social economic fissures from the modern context, as well as the historical roots that was created by the presence of colonial government in the island, then become a feature of the religious fissure at the peak of the conflict in 1999 up to 2002. And both of these fissure, the historical fissure from the colonial governance, and also the socio-economic, more modern fissure from 1970s to 1980s, then become translated into a fissure, a religious fissure between Muslim and Christian groups in the island. So at the peak of the conflict, it became a distinction between Christian and Muslim. Those previous distinction between local and immigrants, for example, those are overwhelmed, drowned by this very strong distinction between Christian and Muslim at the peak of the conflict. Now, there are several concepts in Christian interreligious peace-building theories that help me in understand the dynamics of reconciliation between Muslim and Christian peoples in Ambon, especially among the youth. The first is the concept of multiple religious belonging that was proposed by Rachel Heath, which basically define that any one of us, or most of us really, cannot actually claim that our religiosity only come from one place that is our own, original religion, right? So, for example, me as a Muslim, yes, of course, I was born as a Muslim. I was, I was brought up as a Muslim. I was educated as a Muslim, but in that socialization process, in that education process, where I find my place in the public, where I find my place in my community, I also absorbed other religious perspectives, other religious values and principles, and also embodied them. So really, multiple religious belonging is what I am actually is, not a pure Muslim in terms of, myself is really bordered, and then myself is really closed from the influence of other religious traditions, because especially in our context right now, nobody really able to live completely separated from interaction with the religious other. And then there is the concept of there-ness, which I took from Laurel Schneider, that says attends to what is happening in the middle. Now, there-ness means that when we talk about theology, when we talk about religious differences, we don't talk about doctrinal differences. We don't talk about how actually I don't believe that Jesus was crucified, and then Christian believe that Jesus was crucified. No, actually, when people talk about their religious differences, they talk about what happened in there and now. They talk about how actually Islam influenced my life, and Christianity influenced your life. So we really talk about there-ness. We really talk about what is there, what is the influence of our religious traditions, our religious values in our day-to-day life, not really in our doctrinal differences. Now, the third concept is a concept of coherence, which in here I understood as the wholeness of a particular person or being. So coherence in here doesn't mean that the story needs to have the understanding. We need to have the religious understanding that comes from A to Z. Like when we heard, for example, the story of Ronald and Iskandar, their stories are not actually really neat stories from A to Z. We don't really know how they come to the conflict, for example. They were just thrown there as 10 years old kids who actually see parts of their families, parts of their friends were killed by their own neighbors. So there is no coherence in how people live their life, but this coherence, we need to understand it as this wholeness of particular person, that actually when we try to understand the story of Iskandar and Ronald, we need to see them as human beings. We need to see them in every aspect of their life, in economic, social, culture, religion, everything, and how they position themselves in there. Okay. And then the next thing is that before we go into the discussion of what are the kind of work, interreligious reconciliation work that the Ambonese youth has done, I want to introduce you to this friend of mine whose name is Jack Levin Manuputi. So Jack Levin Manuputi is a pastor. He's Reverend Jack Levin Manuputi. He is also one of the most important peace builders, actors in the reconciliation in the Moluccan society in general. And he actually was one of the people who established friendship networks among youth after the conflict was over. And he does this through reviving a concept called Bakudapa, which is a local language that translates to literally to meet each other. So Bakudapa is this custom that the Ambonese have to just meet with each other, just drop by at the door of your neighbor, and then having tea without any appointment, without any practical goal to do that. So you have free time, you just go somewhere and then you meet your neighbors, and then you agree to get coffee together. So that's one of the traditional customs among the Ambonese society that have been revived in order to promote the interreligious reconciliation after the conflict. And Jack Levin Manuputi actually reviving this concept by building friendship networks among youth. And then there is also this understanding of reconciliation that Jack Levin Manuputi has used, called concentric circles of interreligious reconciliation, which in traditional language is named makang bubur panas, or literally eating hot porridge. Now, this metaphor is that, when we eat hot porridge, right, we will actually start from the outer rim of the porridge itself, because in the middle, the porridge will be just too hot for us and it will burn our mouth. So we will eat from the outer rim of the porridge bowl, and then we will work our way into the middle of the porridge bowl, which is actually the hottest of the porridge. And that way, when we eat it, we don't burn our mouth. So this metaphor translated into a concentric circles of reconciliation in which people of different religious traditions who have been in conflict with each other, when they meet for the first time, they don't talk about theological doctrines. They don't talk about how actually Islam doesn't believe that, Christianity doesn't believe this, and how they're like, you know, in contradiction with each other and everything like that. So the first time interreligious reconciliation starts, it needs to start from the dynamics of daily life. It needs to start to the question of, you know, hey, do you have sugar for my tea? Hey, do you have rice for my food? Right? And then we share these resources together. And then from there, we talk probably about how is your kids at school? How is your work doing? Are you getting fired recently? And, you know, how is your family? So all of these questions have to start the concentric circles, because they are the coolest part of the porridge bowl. They're actually the parts where us as human beings, regardless of our religious differences, can find some similar talking points, even though we are also separated by different socioeconomic status. But everyone right, everyone have job, not everyone have job, but you know, most people have job, and most people can talk about something that they do, that they love, their hobbies. And almost everyone also have families, friends. So those are the things that shape that concentric circles. Now, when trust have been shaped after years and years of dialogue, then we probably come to that safe space where we can actually talk about interreligious differences, about theological differences. Now, as we understand each other, we don't actually take those to be a hostile conversation. We take this to be an understanding, a process of understanding the religious other in our life. Now, the Muslim peace builders of Ambon have these two major characteristics of the reconciliation work that they do. The first is there's a fragmented characteristic, a fragmented approach of the Ambonese Muslims' peace building activities. What I meant by fragmented characteristic here is that many of these peace builders, they are not actually peace builders, right? They didn't actually wake up one morning and said, you know, I want to be a professional peace builders. No, they have their own profession. Some of them are religious leaders, some of them are journalists, some others are businessmen and businesswomen and everything like that. So in Ambonese society, the Muslim peace builders actually do their own thing based on their own field. For example, the Muslim journalists, they will do a reconciliation work based on their journalism work. So they will go with a program called Peace Journalism, for example, in which it is a journalism program where journalists were writing in the language that is conducive and effective for peace building and reconciliation. Muslim professors, for example, in the island, they have this program called the Nonviolence Curriculum, in which they develop a syllabus for undergraduate students in their universities and try to teach the values of nonviolence through the principles in that syllabus. So these are what I call as fragmented approach in the Muslims peace building activities in Ambon. Now, the second approach is a formal approach in which formal officials who came from the Indonesian Ministry of Religious Affairs, for example, they actually did some reconciliation work by delivering sermon, for example, in Friday prayers in mosque, and some other Muslim groups in Ambon through their activities. So there is a formal approach, there is a hands-on approach from the Indonesian government itself, especially through their state religious officials, to spread out the message of peace in the Ambonese society. Now, where is the youth work located between these two? Now, the youth-based interreligious peace building in Ambon actually providing a third space between the fragmented approach in which many different professions kind of doing their own work of reconciliation in their own profession, and the formal approach to peace building in which reconciliation itself becomes something so formal and institutionalized that it was being delivered by state religious officials. So they provide a third space in which their approach is kind of fragmented in terms of the various activities that they do, but it's also have a very unified message of peaceful reconciliation between Muslim and Christian in those myriad forms of activities that they have. And secondly, their interreligious peace building initiatives also based on networks of friendship and interest. So in the Ronald and Iskandar story, we already saw that Ronald, for example, have this dancing activities and initiative that becomes a means of interreligious peace building process for him to reach out to the Muslim friends who are also interested in dancing and also reading poetry. While Iskandar, he was busy with starting the initiative for environmental protection that can also be interreligious in nature, that in which he invited his Christian peers to actually take care of the island in terms of environmental protection. So these networks of friendship and interest are non-structural and non-hierarchical, which is also, I think, another added value to the youth-based interreligious peace building initiative in here. Because with this non-structural and non-hierarchical character, their initiatives are really flexible. They really can adapt to whatever dynamics that happen in the between the youth in Ambon. And then secondly is that there is no leader really. There is no people who the reconciliation method is not a top-down process for them. It is very organic, very friendship-based process that come across as something that they shared as friends, not something that they have as order from above, which is, I think, one of the main weakness of the formal approach to peace building in the island. And then the third characteristic is that there are aspects of daily life that they use as dialogue starters and dialogue builders. So Ronald started from dancing and poetry. Iskandar started from environmental protection. And then when I was there, I was also involved in some of the youth activities for photography. For example, there are clubs, photography clubs, who actually also part of this friendship network of interreligious peace building. Okay, now I think this is one question that I will give to you all in order to start our question and answer session and our discussion. What similar interreligious peace building strategies work for other contexts of interreligious conflict? So let's discuss. Thank you.
A wonderful brainstorming session, I would say, by Professor Fitriyah regarding the interreligious peace building. And I'm really glad to have you, particularly because this is a great, good practice example to the entire world where we are having this kind of conflict crisis. And this particular phase of time for youth, it's very challenging. We have lots of amenities, we have lots of internet connectivity, but at the same time, hate speech, incitement, and burning statement is all over the world we are facing. Thank you so much, first of all, and congratulations for this wonderful talk. I'm very, very grateful to you. I have my partner, Stella Francis from Nigeria, and Nigerian youth are facing quite similar issues. Hi, Stella. Uh, Nigerian youth as well as Indian youth, I would say, nowadays, the scenario has been changed since 10 years, I would say. So we can discuss and we can have a wonderful discussion. So for this particular session, I selected Stella as a discussant for this because Stella have working with the youth on field, particularly detailing with the peace building and how to counter hate speech. So Stella, welcome to the session, and please discuss about your personal overviews for this particular question that Professor Fitriyah asked about, that what other context we can able to have the ideas on peace building and IRD. Stella, up to you. Oh, sorry, Stella, just a minute. I think I have to give you the control to speak. So I'm going to make you as a host. Just a minute, Stella. Stella, could you please try?
Okay. So it's afternoon here in Nigeria. So I will say good afternoon and good evening. Thank you very much, Doctor. That was a very insightful
morning to Professor Fitriyah. And morning to Professor Fitriyah, because it's too early for her.
Oh, I can imagine you have to go through all this to make this wonderful presentation. Thank you so much, Professor. Thank you. Yeah. So for us in Nigeria, it is very important that Doctor mentioned, while she was talking, Professor mentioned about dialogue. Dialogue still remain the key tool for us to be able to counter hate speech, to also promote peace. It has a very key role to do in peace building. So we have been, for a while now, we have been using interreligious and intercultural dialogue, which is trying to understand people's cultural, because Nigeria is very diverse. It's a diverse country with so many languages and different people and different culture. So basically, what we are doing here, we are trying to have the youth seek understanding on other cultures, so that by the time you see a culture, a particular person behaving in a certain way, you don't just overrule it. You try to look at the direction of culture. Probably this person is behaving this certain way from the area of culture. So we seek understanding so that by the time we come together, we will be able to understand and respect. And respect also is it's very key, because if we respect each other and then we respect culture, I think we will be able to find the desirable peace that we are looking for. It's difficult with the era of social media, because most people try to incite people through the social media. And of course, social media is here to stay. So we also are sensitizing people about social media, because of course, there's also fake news. So we also are advocating that people should verify all news. Like you see a news, you verify, you try to at least do a background check before you start promoting what the news is saying. So basically, this is what we are really channeling our effort to, and then we also are channeling effort to target group. Say for instance, the youth from a certain region. For us, we have like the 6 geopolitical zones. So like for what is trending in a particular geopolitical zone with the youth, we try to understand, and we try to make other youth from other geopolitical zones understand, because there are a lot of things that are popping up. We have the IPOP, we have the Boko Haram, we have the farmer headers clashes. So we try and then talk to youths from different geopolitical zones and then try to counter all this. So it's really stressful, it's difficult, but surely dialogue has proven that slowly but surely we will get there. So basically, yeah, that's what we are doing. Dialogue, dialogue, dialogue. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Stella. And I'm really, really glad to have the word from Stella. Now, Salia raised the hand. So up to you. Yes. Would you like to share something from your end? Salia?
Yes, I do.
Yes.
Hello?
Hello. Yes, thank you so much for joining.
Hello?
Yes, please give your introduction so we can able to know you. Yes. Another fellow from Kaisid. Yes.
Yes, my name is Saleh. Yes, from Kaisi, yes. My name is Saleh Badanja Animosha from Interfaith Mediation Center, South Eastern Coordinator, Nigeria. I have appreciate the Prof. But
Sorry.
my
Yes,
main
we couldn't able to hear
purpose
you
of
sometime.
raising my
Yeah.
hand is to just add a little bit an addendum to what Stella said. So Yoruba Nation Agitators also there also and the NSAS agitators. So it is, if not for dialogue and verification of information on the net, since we have gone beyond hands. But all praise be to God that I understand very well, and hence I added these two points of what is going on and how dialogue has been assisting us to be able to curb some of these agitation, especially the ones that are deadly in Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your input. That is very important. Also, we have our guest today for who is joining from UK, Leicester, Kamla Patni from the organization Celebrate Our Similarities. So, Kamla, would you like to share your views regarding how to make peace building in different contexts using dialogue as a tool? Kamla, would you like to share something from your organizational overviews?
Hi, I don't know if you can see me. Can you hear me?
No, but yes, we can hear you.
Okay, that's fine. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Thank you. I wasn't expecting to talk, but thank you so much. I found Professor Fitriyah's presentation amazing. Honestly, it's really moved me. Thank you. And also just hearing about Stella's experiences out there as well. So thank you. From my point of view, we're a Celebrate Our Similarities. We're a charitable organization. And I think, you know, what you're doing that needs to be sort of on a world scale, you know, where we actually recognize our similarities, which is what we're about. Sorry, I've got a bit of a cold. I don't think I've got COVID, but I've got a sore throat. I've been checking, so if you can't hear me properly, that's the reason. So, I mean, I don't think I can. I'm not an academic, so I can't add value to that, but I can tell you what I feel very strongly about. The organization that I've set up, we hope to make direct connections with Dr. Chakrabarti as well over time. So what we're about is we're looking at two things: personal peace, which is what I think your two people that you showed in the film are about. Absolutely. Personal peace and climate change. Those are the two things we as humans need to somehow connect with each other all over the world, because I think that's our similarity that is so powerful, that can overcome any differences, in my view. And how do we do that? You know, so what we're doing is we're under those two themes, we're identifying things that make us human. So, you know, air, water, food, good sleep, equality, well-being, mental health, all of those things make us a rounded individual as a human being. If we are in contentment within all of those things, we do not rise to any conflict with, you know, we have a strong stake in keeping the status quo when we are content. It's only when we are completely lost or have lost our equilibrium in one form or another that we react when somebody provokes us, and that keeps multiplying. And unless we diffuse that, which is what your film was showing, until you diffuse that, we'll see that we're both coming from the same place, and we've both got the same understanding and misunderstanding. They're the same thing, you know. And how do you do that? You know, how do you diffuse that on not on a specific issue like what you're mentioning there, that, you know, how do you stop those two particular peoples engaging with each other in a peaceful way? How can we as human beings realize that if we don't work together, we're going to finish off the whole planet now, you know, regardless of what religion you come from. The volcano that's going off right now, it's not going to discriminate against what religion you are. It will squash you, you know. If the floods come, if the swarms come, if whatever comes, it's not going to discriminate. And we need to get past this thing of my way is the right way and your way is the wrong way, you know, approach in general. And within that context, as an organization, we're identifying good practice examples in those areas. And we started with personal peace, which is my favorite from when I was quite young. And we think we've found something that is very, very powerful. And it's in about 37 languages that this individual started talking about personal peace from the age of 4, and he's developed, and he's now 64 actually, and he's developed a peace education workshop series that's been translated in all the different languages, and it's been massively effective, particularly between warring clans, prisoners, high security prisoners in South Africa as well, and in many other situations, but also the police officers and the prison wardens, they've benefited from it. So it's a completely human-based, non-political, non-religious, non-vested interest kind of free course that is really powerful. And I would love for all of those that are here to find out more about it. And I'm happy to put a link on there for you to directly get in touch with the charity that does it. And if I can help, I'd be more than happy to help. But also engage with us as Celebrate Our Similarities, because we're in the city. Leicester is in the UK, has got the De Montfort University, which has been identified by the United Nations as the international hub for peace, justice, and strong institutions, goal 16. Now, we're so uniquely positioned, together with the fact that our city in the UK UK being quite powerful, however we look at it, it's quite powerful in the world's stage, that Leicester is the most diversely populated city in the UK. And we've got about 70 languages, and we've got like a microcosm of the world's community living here in our city, in a very tiny geography. If we can identify good practice examples that work in those areas that I'm mentioning, how much social impact we could potentially make, especially with being a United Nations hub for peace, justice, and strong institutions. I mean, within those three things, you can achieve so much. And we are looking for collaborations all the time. And we're now set up as a non-profit, and I welcome any support and any collaboration. Sorry for going on a little bit. I do get carried away.
It's perfectly all right. It's perfectly all right, Kamla. Thank you so much, Kamla, for sharing this. We are almost at the end of the discussions today. We don't have much time we have only 2 minutes left. So I request Rajendra to share something in terms of Nepal, because Nepal is very close to not only close to India, but Nepal is a place where India, China, when they are facing lots of challenges, Nepal could play a very important, vital role in terms of the conflict handling and how to create positive dialogue between these two superpower they are, quote unquote, they are talking about. But actually, the entire world is now in a situation where anything could happen. So I think Nepal could play a vital role in terms of positive dialogue.
Sorry. Thank you, Dr. Chakravarti. Good evening, good morning. Greetings of the day to you all from Nepal. Dr. Chakravarti, that's quite a big question, but I was thinking about some smaller one related to this.
Definitely share that one first.
Sure. Lecture in particular. I was so moved by Dr. Ferti's dialogue. Actually, two things I noted in it. The fragmented approach is very, I think, important approach. And then that's what I also, particularly in my peace building work, focus, because I just want people to, do peace building from their own area of professionalism. So, for instance, as Dr. Ferti said, journalists working as peace journalists, bankers working could be as the peace bankers, something like that. So that's very important. That's like last year I was running a summer school on transitional justice here in Nepal, and I happened to meet some people from South Africa. They were sharing this experience where they said, like, in South Africa, they gave trainings to the journalists about peace journalism in the like post-conflict phase, and that really helped South Africa to deal with the violent past. So that was one experience, and then I was moved. And the other one is like structured activities. That is again like very important. So when you said structured, I remember of the Fambul talk of like Sierra Leone by John Colker. So yeah, I know I don't know this. If you have come across this person, like very fantastic work he has done in Sierra Leone, like bringing people under a tree to have that family talk and doing some kind of ritual activities, and that kind of helped this country to come to the terms with their past violences and the grievances. And also one last thing, I was moved by Dr. Ferdy's talk was she talked about this organic bottom-up thing, and which I think is very important in peace building, because most of the times we keep on focusing the Western-led liberal peace building, and then we tend to forget our one way of dealing with the conflicts, because we all have like our one style, one ways, approaches of dealing with it, traditional ways, so bottom-up ways. So we tend to forget that thing at certain times, and that's right, like really important to remember those things, and that's what I try to focus on my works here in Nepal also. And I remember I want to share one thing, that I was working in Peace Circle in Nepal in the post-conflict societies, bringing both the victims society and the perpetrators, alleged perpetrators together, and then we were conducting some peace dialogues together. By then, and we had very limited funding, and we had to do the dialogues in just 2 rounds, and it was kind of like it backfired to us. And I at that time like realized, if this was something like our own way of doing this, dialogue, we have our own way of doing dialogue. In people come to the villagers come in below one banana tree, and then they talk. So this sort of dialogue is also there in existence, but we tend to forget this, and then we were trying to have that Western way of doing it, and then we ultimately failed, and we haven't been able to resolve all these past violences, all these past grievances people had after the conflict. So that's quite a big problem. And then I really thank Dr. Fadi that she's pointed out this very clearly. And thank you so much, Dr. Chakraborty, for this opportunity. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much for joining from the very beginning. So I must congratulate to all the participants, to Stella Francis, who is one of my partner for the project, what we are doing currently together, to countering hate speech with the tool of IRD, and how to deal with the youth particularly, who are, they are, I think, the bright future for any nation. So we need them to motivate, we need them to give them the right path in the field of peace building in a very early age. So thank you so much, Professor Fitriyah, and I have no word to express my gratitude. We are receiving lots of good messages from the other participants, and yes, of course, from Dr. Singh is talking about that respect to each other is very important. And with this, I'm going to end today's session. I wouldn't say goodbye, but it is a new start for all of us. And kindly share your email ID, Professor Fitriyah, so everybody can able to connect with you in future collaboration, also to some other projects dealing with your own expertise. Wish you all the best for your upcoming paper, upcoming research in the field of IRD, which is very important to address nowadays. Thank you so much, Stella, for joining with me. Thank you, all of you.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care. Have a nice day. Professor Fitriyah, have a nice evening and good night. I have shared the feedback link for the e-certificate, so kindly fill it out. Thank you so much.